Welcome to the Car Guy Right. Today we are working on a 2006 Kia Sedona and we are going to change the front discs and pads. So first off we want to start by removing the two T40 hex piece screws that hold the disc to the hub. Now in this case they look pretty new, the discs hasn't been changed that long ago, but the car's been sat for quite a while and the discs have corroded and rusted up quite badly and they just need to be replaced so it's roadworthy. But in this case they should be easy enough to get out because we're going straight in with the impact gun with the correct size socket. So once you've done that, grab yourself a 17mm spanner or ratchet and remove the two bolts connecting the brake caliper to the brake hanger. Now your two bolts that you've just removed from your caliper are also your slide pins for your caliper, that basically they give movement for the brake pads to move backwards and forwards on the caliper. Let's go ahead and remove the brake caliper. On this one there is two pistons, so it's a dual piston setup. Let's put that to one side. Next up, let's just remove these old brake pads. Sometimes they can be a little bit stuck in, so just use a flathead screwdriver and just pry them out. As you can see, there are plenty of meat left on them, but we are going to replace them anyway. Next, you notice on that brake pad I've just removed from the rear, that is basically it's a little device that when your brakes get too low, it'll hit on the brake disc and cause a squeal. There's basically an indication to let you know that your brake pads are getting low and require replacement. So next, let's go ahead and remove the brake caliper hanger. These are held on with 21mm sockets. Again, you can use a spanner, but I wouldn't really recommend using a spanner. Use either an impact, if you can get it in there, or a ratchet. Sometimes they get really seized on, so you'll have to get a breaker bar in there. But in this case, they aren't actually all that tight, as you can see. Now with removing this bottom one finally, the hanger should come off like that. And we will give this a good clean up, we'll get the wire wheel to it. I'll do this off camera because it just makes it easier, but I'll show you the results after. Also, you need to clean your brake hardware up where it sits just in your grooves there. That over time builds up a rust on the hanger, and installing the new brake pads can make it a little bit more difficult for the built up rust. Let's go ahead and remove that old disc. As you can see, it's quite corroded on the back there, so definitely requires a replacement. So now we're just going to clean the area off on the hub where the disc sits. Sometimes these discs can get corroded to the hub and you have to get the bit of welly behind them with a hammer and just to knock them off. So a bit of brake clean on there first. Get the wire brush on there. Not going to go too mad because this is not too bad. I'm just showing you basically the how-to part of it. As you can see, someone has been in there before and used some copper grease. Now on the back of these you can use copper grease. It will stop the disc seizing to the hub and make it a lot more easier next time you come to take it off. So we're just cleaning it off again now with some more brake cleaner. And we'll just give it a quick dry off with a nice clean rag just to get any excess crap off. and then that will be ready then for the new disc. So yeah, we're just applying a little thin layer of copper grease just to the fascia of the hub itself. You don't want to go too mad because you don't want the grease to flick off everywhere. Just a nice light even coat around the outside of it. Now here we have the new discs. Over time they can rust if they're not come with grease. So the factory put a little thin layer of grease on them just to protect them from getting rusted. So we just use some brake cleaner just to clean off that oil. Obviously if you apply that and you put your new brake pads on, you're going to have issues and you're not going to stop. So you must always remember to clean both front and the back of your new discs and wipe them down with a nice clean rag. Then you can go ahead and install it onto the car. Now remember, you've got your two T40 bolts that we take out at the start. Those are just to basically retainer screws just to hold the disc on so it doesn't fall off. If you don't have those, you can just use the nuts itself, the wheel nuts, just to hold the disc on while you're putting all the caliper and the hanger back on. As you can see, what I'm doing there is I've actually noticed that the splash shield for the brake disc is actually touching each other, so I've just bent it back a little bit just to stop any grinding. So here we have now the cleaned up brake caliper hanger. You can use it as different names, brake pad holder, whatever you want to call it really. So on these rubber seals here now, that's where your slide pin goes into. Make sure you clean those out. So you can take the rubber off, no problem. Just get a nice piece of clean rag, get it down in there, twist it round so it's all clean, and get some brake cleaner, plenty of brake cleaner, and clean it out thoroughly. And just check there's no rust inside. So now we're going to go ahead and install the hanger back onto the axle itself, onto the strut, sorry, itself. Putting the two bolts back in, 21mm. Make sure you tighten them down evenly. Don't do the bottom one, tighten it up, or the top one first and tighten it up. Now that is on and secure, we are going to go ahead and install the brake hardware. These are just basically little clips that sit on the hanger and your new brake pads will fit into them. Sometimes it can be a little bit fiddly to get back on, so just make sure you press them on and that you can hear a click sound. That click sound indicates that they've snapped on properly. Okay, so here's our new brake pad. As again, that goes at the back because that is your squeal device. Indicates low brake pads, so that'll touch on the disc when you've got a low brake pad and indicate that you need to change them. So we're going to put some copper grease on the shims of the brake pads now. This will just help the new pads seat properly and slide backwards and forwards. Obviously if you put them in dry, they're going to rust and you're going to have seized brakes. So this will just help prevent that issue from arising. Also just put a little bit, not too much, just a little touch inside the hardware itself. And then get your new brake pad and fit it into the back of the into the back of the hanger. Now the brake pads will only go on one way, so make sure you put them in the right way. As I said, they'll only go on one way. You'll know when you've got it wrong because it won't go in. Now that one is in, we'll go ahead and go to the front one. So again, just doing the same again for the front one, greasing up the shims. You can use copper grease for this because heat resistant. And there we go, in nice. Now we're going to go on to the caliper. And this is a dual piston caliper because it is quite a heavy car. So basically what you need to do now is you need to squeeze these two pistons back into the bore. Basically, if you go to put this on now, it's not going to fit because your pistons have come out to adjust the calipers, to push the calipers in more. So what I'm using here is just a little C-clamp, and I'm using the old brake pad on top of the pistons. And I'll push one side down first, and the piston will slowly start going back in. Once you can't tighten it anymore, you feel it getting tight, then stop because the piston has then bottomed out and you are ready to go on to the next piston. Okay, so now you can see that both pistons are perfectly flat and flush with the bore. Now this should easily go onto your new brake pads. Like so. Now next up, what we need to do is we need to get your slide pins, need to clean those up. And these rubber seals here, it'll just go straight in there. And it'll slide backwards and forwards. You'll notice that the caliper moves more freely than it should do. This is because you've pressed the pistons back into their bore. So make sure before you even drive the car, you press the brake pedal multiple times until the brake pedal becomes firm. This will push the pistons back out onto the new brake pads so you have a nice firm pedal. So as I said, you need to use silicone grease. This is also heat temperature proof, and it's also waterproof. Don't know why you'd need waterproof, but okay. So just apply a little bit onto the slide pins. You don't want to go mad, just a nice even line. And then just basically smear that around all over the slide pin. And then you just want to go ahead and pop it into the hole itself. Obviously, if you feel any resistance, it's not quite going in properly, just adjust the caliper, lift it up or down so it slides in properly, like so. And then make sure you also have the thread correct. Don't screw it in and it's feeling it's tight when you're screwing it in. You want to stop and back it out and do it again because it should go in nice and smoothly. So we'll do the same again for the bottom one. The bottom one has a rubber seal on it. So you can put silicone paste all over that. That's absolutely fine because obviously it will protect the rubber as well. So now those slide pins are back in. You want to get yourself your 17mm socket on your ratchet and tighten up your caliper. You can see the caliper moving backwards and forwards more than it should, this is perfectly fine. Just go ahead and press the brake pedal and bring the pistons back in. So there we go. That is one brake job done. We're going to go ahead and do the other side. I'm not going to record that because you've already seen this side being done. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful for you if you're learning on cars. Until next time, people, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.